Referral networking helps companies leverage current and former employees as referrers of talent and new business. For more than 10 years, Select Minds has created corporate employee and alumni networks that help great organizations recruit talent, enhance their brand, and develop new business by focusing on one key fact: good people refer other good people. Welcome to an Inside Recruiting Channel podcast on Total Picture Radio. This is Peter Clayton reporting from New York City. And joining us today is the founder and CEO of Select Minds, Ann Berkowitz. Ann, what does Select Minds do and who do you do it for?
As you very appropriately said, we help companies build networks of their current and former employees, so employees and alumni, that companies do leverage to help drive referrals of talent, of new business, and that they use as general branding. So we started about 10 years ago, launched the idea of a corporate alumni network. This was before the days of social networking. Really is a recruiting solution with the idea that, in fact, the former employees of a company provided a very rich talent pool, as counterintuitive as that is, either to rehire some of the best players or to leverage relationships with alumni to drive referrals of other talent.
And I have to think that your approach to this business today is completely different than it was 10 years ago.
It's completely different. Interestingly, the core idea isn't any different. It's based on the notion that a company's employees and alumni know other people like them that are of value to an organization, either because they could become customers or they could become, employees. But the way that companies are managing those relationships and leveraging those relationships is completely different, obviously, with the advent of social networking. So today, it's companies trying to understand the social web, trying to maintain these relationships online through these connections, through social networks, and trying to build and manage and engage those relationships so that they could leverage them into new business or recruiting. But, it involves the social web, and that's really scary for a lot of companies.
Absolutely. Back to the basic premise, which is the referral. That's the gold standard.
It's intuitive. I mean, this goes back hundreds of years, right? You say if you're going to hire somebody, go find a referral. But the data shows it. I mean, the statistics show it. I think there was actually an ERE report that said that a candidate that is submitted via referral 54 times more likely to be hired than a candidate that comes in from a job board. And essentially what that says is a candidate who's referred in by an employee or by an alumnus of a company is much more likely to be relevant, to have a relevant background, and to be a good fit because they've essentially been vetted, right, by the employees and the alumni. And that's a big part of what we do with companies. I mean, I was talking about how we help companies build these alumni networks and maintain relationships. We've also launched a product called Talent Vine, which automates the talent referral process and which uses technology to suggest people from employees and alumni networks on the social web who might be good matches for openings at their company, at the organization.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this Talent Vine product that you've launched because, a big complaint I hear from many people in HR and recruiting is all of these legacy ATS systems and CRM systems, they don't talk to each other. And everything is siloed and, on a spreadsheet somewhere and no one has access to all of this data.
You're absolutely right that all of these tools that help manage relationships and connections need to be integrated with the business operating systems that they support. When we talk to our clients about managing these networks, we often say it's about collecting, connecting, engaging, and leveraging. And as kind of buzzwordy as that sounds, what that means is, to really derive value from a social network of any kind, you have to collect people, you have to actually create the network and bring them together. You have to connect them, so you need a technology or some way to actually build the connections. You have to engage them because a mere connection doesn't drive any value. Unless you can engage people in the network, and unless you can engage your alumni and really create a dialogue and build a relationship, there's no trust, there's no social capital, there's no relationship capital to trade on. And then once you've engaged them, then you can leverage them. Then you put them, then you integrate with the recruiting process or the business development process or some operating process that can leverage that relationship. But unless you do all four of those, you might end up with a whole lot of connections on some social network, but a company doesn't actually derive value from it. It's got to be a very integrated system.
There's certainly a bunch of press out there about privacy concerns, especially as related to Facebook. In speaking with your large clients, people like Lockheed Martin, are they concerned about privacy issues on these networks?
Hugely, hugely, hugely. And, again, that's one of the advantages a solution like ours offers them, is that our platform, which allows them, again, to manage these alumni and these employee networks, is a platform that's essentially controlled by Lockheed Martin, very, very integrated with LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. So from the employee or the alumni's perspective, they go back and forth very easily. But at the end of the day, the companies can configure who gets to see their information, just like on any social network. But companies can also configure business rules as to who can see what kind of information, who can talk to who can have different privileges in connecting with different types of people. And they also, we get put through incredibly rigorous IT audits around data security, around privacy, compliance, application security. So ours offers companies a platform for managing a social network that interacts with the public social web, but still happens on a platform where a company feels like it's a more controlled, secure, private environment that has, it's not the wild, wild west.
I want to talk to you about a white paper that's on the homepage on the Select Minds website. It's called Referral Programs 2.0, and your paper quotes extensively from Jean Meister's book, The 2020 Workplace, How Innovative Companies Attract, Develop, and Keep Tomorrow's Employees. Can you share some of her predictions and some of her data points with us?
One prediction she made, which I found very interesting and intuitive, is that she talks about the notion of reputation capital that she feels is going to drive a lot of hiring decisions in the future. And she defines reputation capital as being a much more holistic view of a candidate that encompasses not only a candidate's expertise and experience, knowledge, skills, but also kind of their personal brand, a reflection of how connected they are, what the nature of their network is, how much kind of trust, credibility, essentially what the reputation of a person is. And that's an interesting notion, because if you think about how people are hired, I think those are all the factors that are indeed taken into account. But it's interesting as it relates to social networks is how people present themselves through social networks. And the fact is, when you look at somebody on Facebook, if they had a full professional profile there, you would get to see a much more holistic view of a person. We conducted some research to understand how employees or how candidates make their choices of where to go work. And very interesting what we found, which is that the top sources of information that candidates seek are employees working at companies and what they're saying about the company, alumni of that company and what they're saying about the company, and third is the corporate webpage. So we see that word of mouth and reputation of a company as shared across these social networks is really, really important. So from a company's perspective, they're saying, man, oh man, how do we influence what our employees and our alumni are saying about us as an employer? Because their voices are becoming louder and louder and carrying more and more weight. It's a whole new set of challenges, both for candidates and employers, to represent them. And I think that's right. Jean's concept of reputational capital, it's kind of a fancy word for reputation, but much, much harder to manage in this era of social networks.
Absolutely. And from a company's standpoint, you can go onto Glassdoor.com or Vault.com and you can read exactly what employees think about that organization. It's all right there.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, again, coming back to, from a company's perspective, leveraging the social web, just having a social network or just being plugged into the social web gives you the reach. But that doesn't do a lot for you. And so when companies are managing these, building these alumni networks or these employee networks, it's not enough to just, put the technology up that enables a whole bunch of people to connect. That doesn't really do anything for them. What really helps them drive value through these networks is to engage the members, is to engage the alumni, engage the employees, so that they're having conversations there, not necessarily on Vault. And the way to engage them is, really to very actively manage those communities, those networks. How do we build all these relationships online through social networks? How do we engage people? How do we build trust? How do we have a dialogue? How do we really influence word of mouth? you can't be routine, you can't be, mechanical about it. We offer community management services when we work with clients, and it's incredible when we see, all the metrics around engagement just shoot right up when we actually put a community manager on one of these networks to help manage it. We monitor all of that activity and say, what content is being looked at? What are the searches that people are conducting? What kind of search results? Are they finding what they're looking for? What Select Minds really focuses on, as I started out by saying, is helping companies navigate that tension of wanting to be in the conversation on the social web, but trying to understand how to do it in a protected and a somewhat controlled way. And it's a big struggle for companies. They're really trying to work it out and figure out how to do that. And at the core is the recognition of organizations, as I said, that business is best conducted through people. Here's a phenomenal opportunity to connect with a lot of people, but it's got to be at the end of the day based on some kind of relationship and trust and credibility.
This is a bonus track excerpt from a podcast interview with the founder and CEO of Select Minds, Ann Berkowitz. Visit Ann's feature page in the Inside Recruiting channel of Total Picture Radio. That's TotalPicture.com to listen to the full 28-minute podcast. You'll also find a complete transcript and reference links. This is Peter Clayton reporting.